mid-season draft is here. How exciting. Joel's back. Let's get straight into it.
Bounced in the vicinity of Carey. Magnificent! What a goal! And that is nearly the goal of the season.
All right, everybody, we've got an incredibly exciting episode here now. He hasn't been on the podcast for a while, but Joel the Super Spy, the Arden Street Super Spy, is back. Probably the most knowledgeable football brain in Australia. Like we've heard, Tom Morris, gets a bit of credit. Cal Toomey thinks he knows what he's talking about. I reckon we've got the number one footy mind in the country right here. Joel's back, guys. Hopefully everyone's excited to have him back, but welcome back on the podcast, mate.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Definitely good company you've put me in there with, so look, I'll take it. It sounds good when you say that.
They're lucky to be lumped into that sentence with you, mate. I think you've broke more stories last year. We know what your it'll go down in Further North podcast history. You predicting our entire last three picks in the draft. I think that's going down in folklore, and I'll never forget it as a moment. That's for sure.
I'll definitely keep that one. Don't you worry.
Yeah, put that one straight on the resume, mate.
Straight in the fridge, mate. Even better.
Absolutely. So we did talk about this off air a little bit, but we're going pretty rogue with this one. We've just got a few questions to ask about North Melbourne and a few prospects we're looking at in the mid-season draft. Look, it's a bad year for your football club when you're genuinely excited for the mid-season draft, but that's where we're at the moment. So maybe give everyone a little bit of a couple of minutes chat about where you think North's at. What's your views on North Melbourne this season so far?
Well, obviously it's not the start that we would hope for. I think that's a very light way of putting it. But we have, it was one of those ones at the end of last year, I even thought it myself, when you've seen players like Zeeble, Cunnington, Hall, Mackay, Goldstein, all these players leave, to expect to be much better immediately, we would hope that our basement would lift up a bit more. But it's probably not as surprising where we are given those losses. However, I would say that there's actually a fair few green shoots coming through. McKercher, we're starting to see what he's capable of. He's doing those longer runs. He's doing those longer kicks. He's deadly by foot. Durs, who I thought was playing a little bit earlier. You see small moments every game, like where he'll somehow get a goal in a game that he didn't have a right to. He'll kick big moments. He'll take marks occasionally. And you can see where he's going. Hardiman coming in and playing, a defensive role and some of that off half back, I've really enjoyed. And Will Dawson getting his first game is also, really, really good to see. And he's been, knocking down the door in the VFL. That I've been to a few of the games there. He's didn't see it as much this week, but with Essendon, but he did a really tough job on Peter Wright, who's much bigger, much stronger, obviously. But in a few years, that's the kind of player that we'll be using a lot more, the Will Dawsons. He's our future in that back. Unfortunately, Taylor Goad's been a bit slower in the reserves at the moment, but he was always going to be a long-term prospect as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they're the things at the moment we've got to sort of look at. And, we've been talking on the pod a little bit about you've got to go to the footy when we're at this stage as a team and find the small wins. And those are some, I think you said as well off air, Paul Curtis going to another level, Chom doing what he's doing down back, even Tom Powell stepping up and taking a step this year. There is good positive things. The performance against the Bombers, obviously a big step forward, and hopefully it can be replicated tomorrow against the Power. I think we're going to be releasing this after that game though. But look, I think you're right. I think we've got to focus on those little wins because a big win hasn't come yet. So when do you think we're going to win a game, mate? Give us your prediction. We know your predictions are always 100% correct. When's our first win coming?
It's a tough one to see at the moment, to be honest. But that being said, I think the back half of the year we'll get Logue back. I think it'll be before Richmond, I'll call, and I reckon we'll still win 2 more games for the year, 2 to 3. I still actually will call we'll win a couple. The reason I say it is I'm seeing some improvement. The backline's been a lot more stable, and you're getting players staying in games longer. And I honestly think the back half of the year we'll see more than the one win. I reckon we'll play ourselves out of the number one pick is my gut feel, because I think Richmond's been terrible, and I'm not sure.
They're good at that.
But they'll bring players back. Yes, they've done that well. But it's not a bad year to come off the bottom unlike last year, so we'll take it.
Yes. Well, let's not talk about that. All right, let's get into this mid-season draft, mate. A massive mid-season draft. Let's find a few gems in here. So let's quickly, we'll both sort of talk about it. But give us 3 positions. What are your 3 positions in the team you think we need to fill the most right now?
It's going to be no surprise when I say the first one, which is key position forward. We've tried a couple of different players in that spot, including what my mate Mick has been saying is Pink Duck. So when Pink is playing up forward, he looks like Duck, so it's Pink Duck now.
Oh no!
Hey, you got
That's
that lovely stud on that ball and kicked it. So yeah, Pink Duck's one. We've tried CCJ, who we're going to keep that one.
Yeah.
And the other one being Sellers, who unfortunately did not have a very strong start.
No.
But they're the players that we've got behind Larky, and outside of that, we're trying a lot of things without a lot of success in that role. Other positions, I honestly, and it's going to sound like a weird one considering our list, I think we're actually strong inside mid-short, which I didn't think that we had issues with at the start of the year. At the moment in the VFL, we've only got one player playing midfield, which is Will Phillips, and he's not really he's looking okay, but he hasn't set the world on fire when he's come into the AFL, which is really disappointing this year. So outside of him, I think we're actually getting a bit thinner in the middle. And you've heard people talk about key backs, but I don't think that's the one. I think a small lockdown backman is another one that we could use, but I don't, I think Archer can potentially do that really well. You've seen Almac has actually been fairly strong one-on-one in defense this year, and he's worked a lot better the last few weeks. So we've blocked that a lot better than we have. But Guelphy got off last week, and I think that's been an issue for us previous years as well. So they're the three positions I'd probably want.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'd mirror probably a couple of those. Obviously, for number one for me is a key forward to help out Larky. I think hard to find. Obviously, mid-season draft players who weren't maybe good enough, which is a hard thing to say, but weren't maybe with the potential to be drafted in the main draft. I think we've just got to go for it. That's the biggest hole in the team right now. And, like you said, our defense has actually been all right. If people are watching North Melbourne games, you know that the defense is actually much improved. The midfield on its day is very, very good or very, very poor. There's sort of no in between. And just the forward line, although Curtis was running amok earlier in the year, and I still think he's been very solid all year. Ford, I like down there. Someone to mark the ball, mate, because we know if we win the clearance, we don't have the composure to hit someone on the chest. And, I can only imagine if we did have a Charlie Comben down there, which, with Logue coming back, maybe he does. But, I think he, like Clarkson sort of talked about, needs the continuity down back. So, if we could have just someone to take a mark, they'd probably kick 3 or 4 goals a game for us with how we delivered into that forward 50. So, look, key forward would be number one for me. Number 2, I agree with you as well. Big body midfielder. Anything to replicate what Ben Cunnington can bring. No, we're not going to get a player of that level, obviously, but just I'd like a big mature body that's good under the pack and can bring a bit of grit, hard tackling, hard pressure, and be able to get the ball out to some of these, smooth movers like LDUs and Wardlaws and Sheezels and that sort of stuff. So that would definitely be my second. And you're right, like, at the start of the year, imagine if we thought we'd be sitting here saying we need another midfielder. Riley Sanders maybe would have been good to fill that role as well. But hey, this is where we're at. The only other one I could say maybe differ on slightly, I'd probably be giving Jackson Archer the run in that lockdown. You're right, Luke McDonald's stepping up. I'd still like Miller Bergman in that role as well. I think he did a good lockdown job in the first half before his hamstring went. Maybe we tried this last year, but a small forward, a small tackling pressure forward who actually kicks goals as well. Drury doesn't seem to be able to add goals to his game. Robert Hansen maybe hasn't come on at all. Skeptical one, but we can see little glimpses maybe sometimes in the VFL, and he had a couple of moments at the times he got to try his game in the AFL, but I think a small crumbing forward who can put some pressure on and lay a tackle would be fantastic. Maybe bring Phoenix Spicer back. Joel, what do you think of that?
The old Phoenix Spicer. He was actually being very well looked at by particularly the Bulldogs as the team because he's been playing for their VFL side. Yeah, first few games he actually kicked I think it was 5 goals in his first 3 games there, and he hits the scoreboard regularly. So, but he's one of the players that is a bit of a talk out. The other one from North as well that's getting a bit of talking and is Alec or put himself out there was Flynn Perez.
Yes, I've
He's
heard
also
this.
getting a bit of a look at in the mid-season draft.
Ugh.
I mean, I'm not sure he'll find a home, to be honest, but that being said, he's out there and he's been playing good at his level. I think he's waffle, if I'm not mistaken, at the moment, but
Okay.
yeah, he's doing a little bit there.
Yeah, I've heard Lockie Young is trying to make a comeback through the mid-season draft as well. I talked to a friend of Lockie Young's and said he's training to try and make a mid-season draft push. So maybe that can be your lockdown defender you're after, Joel. But look, let's stay away from past North players that haunt our dreams and lives still. Look, the only thing I enjoyed about Phoenix Spicer was his name, but that will be a name that we do when we do the Further North live podcast in 2045 and we hold up a board saying who is this player. You better be saying Phoenix Spicer, that's for sure, because that name's going to go down in history.
Never forget Phoenix.
No, absolutely not. All right, let's get into a couple of the prospects. Do you just want to lay out for us which picks we have and maybe what you think North Melbourne will be trying to do with them?
Well, we've got pick 1, obviously. That's our first one from being on the bottom. Last time we had pick 1, there was a player that I was worried at the time wouldn't nominate himself. And since then has very quietly left the league, which is Jacob Edwards.
Yes.
Closely followed behind him was John Newcomb, which is very exciting to see.
This is sad. This is sad.
Depressing state of affairs that one was. But then I think the next year we ended up with Kalen Dawson. So that's probably the best key position player to come out of the draft, which is sort of where I rate the key positions in that. The other one is pick 14, I believe it is, which there's last year we passed on our second pick. This year, I reckon we probably use, depending on what we do with our first pick, which is going to be a bit more of an interesting one. That's because obviously the long-term injuries to CCJ and to Goda. There was talk about, obviously, I think we talked about before if Karen's spot was up, and I believe it's not being, since it's not a long-term injury and it's a contract thing, we don't get a pick for that one. That being said, I don't think we would use it at all.
Yeah, taking three players in the mid-season draft does seem a bit hefty, but yeah, I think that's important information to let everyone know, which I wasn't aware of before we started the chat before was, obviously Taran not being injured, I guess technically still contracted and suspended, and means that, he's still, he isn't available to open up a list spot. So two picks going in, number 1 and number 14. Your gut feel from what you've heard, what is North going to prioritize?
There's two players that we're heavily connected to at one. One thing that we've been continually connected to is a key position forward. Like whether that's with our first or second pick, which is why I think depending on who we pick first, we'll end up probably taking one of those. There's a few good options around, or a few interesting options around. As I said, I don't overly get ambitious with the key positions in the mid-season. Usually they're a play with 2 or 3 knee reconstructions that has started to show their wares at, like either waffle or sandful level, but hadn't had a good enough run previously to get in. So it'll be an interesting one to see, but there's a few good prospects that are interesting to look at least. And the other one, so that'll be an interesting one for us. But with pick 1, what are we thinking? What would you like, Josh, with our first pick?
Definitely the key position. Definitely the key position. And then I think, with 14, we'd probably try and do a big bodied mid. They're probably the 2 I would go. The biggest hole is key position forward. I think we're more likely to get a good midfielder in the normal draft. So don't use your first pick on a midfielder in the mid-season draft. I think you're more like key position players can be a little bit more sporadic. You can sort of find them out of nowhere a little bit easier. I believe anyway, you can find a good key position player lower in the national draft, like a Larky. And I feel like mid-season draft, I'd probably be more willing to bank on a key position player. Let's go through a couple of the players then. Who are some of the key position players that we've been linked with?
The biggest link that we've had is this guy. I was originally looking at this guy, Noah Howes. He's 196 centimetre, 18-year-old key position forward from South Adelaide. He's had a couple of good games, looks strong overhead. think he's kicked, I think, 4 goals in a couple of games, which is pretty good at that level for his age. But it seems like a few of the sides have sort of been a bit scared off of him. The one that we're getting really heavily connected to now is a guy, Jasper Scaife.
Yes, I've
he's
heard this
been
one.
playing for West. Yeah, he's been playing for West Perth. He's 197 centimeters. He turns 20 in September. He had one particularly really good game. He ended up with like 9 marks, kicked 4 goals too. He's able to kick it from outside 50, so probably about 55 meters out he can kick from and still get a goal. He's really strong overhead. He reads the play pretty well. He can pick it up well below his knees, which is something I like to watch at people that size. And his pace is actually fairly reasonable. My knocks on him is I don't see him taking a lot of those contested marks, which reminds me a bit of our other key forward at the moment.
I know.
And outside, if he's not impacting the game, he's minimal at that level as well. So, and there's also been a bit of a question mark on him and a bit of a query on him recently on some sort of medical concerns. So that's
do you have any idea what they might be? Because I heard about this as well, but I didn't see much detail about what it might be. Do you know what it is?
They haven't greatly specified in anything that I've seen. And as I said, the games that I've seen of him, he slipped fine, but there's obviously something there that it's enough that it's gotten into the wider community about it. I think he'll still be an early pick, but it's just one that's gotten out there. I don't know exactly what it is. He looked pretty fine from the games that I've seen him play.
So
but, out
of Noah and Jasper, then which one would you be picking up if you could make that call? Because look, I don't have the knowledge that you do on them, but I've done a bit of research and tried to watch a few highlights and see how they attack the ball. I don't know. Jasper to me seems like a slightly better prospect, but by the way you're talking about it, I feel like maybe you'd lean towards Noah House.
There's things about Noah House that I like a little bit more. I think he impacts games even like it's his quieter games. Yeah, that's how I'd probably describe it. His basement in his games is better than Scaife's, in my opinion. Scaife, though, his ceiling's higher than Noah House, in my opinion, as well. Because like Scaife, what I've loved about, and I've seen him, and I've watched a few. I had to go back and watch a few of his. Is he picks the ball up well below his knees, which is rare for someone his size at 197 centimeters. And he's, a decent kick from outside 50, which I like to see as well. That's probably one of the things I liked about Peter Wright. If he takes a mark far out, he's a good kick from that distance. Larky's probably a bit more limited in that space. He tends to kick it from about the 50, is about his outer range. But yeah, and his mobility for his size is good. I can see why Scaife is preferred above House, but I think House is less exciting, but probably more consistent, if that makes sense.
Do you think it's better to bank on potential than it would be someone more solid?
I would definitely go potential in this draft because it's very rare that you hit. So you want to, if you're going to throw something, you want to make sure you get something big out of it. Like even the best player to ever come out of the mid-season, in my opinion, is Jai Newcomb. And even for a Jai Newcomb, I think he's a very limited player. Like he's has those massive games, but he's got a lot of limitations, and you can see why. He's their best midfielder, but I don't think he's like, you compare him to an LDU who's got that explosive pace, can kick the ball from, kick multiple goals and leaves the zone better. I think that's the difference in talent that you see, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think what we really need to prioritize, if there's a player in that draft that can literally just take a mark and kick a goal, I think that's all we need to hope for, to be honest. I mean, I've said this for a bit. If someone wants a player that I would love to bring in that's not a superstar, and I know he's not going to come, but like a Dan McStay type, just, doesn't do anything crazy, just can take a great pack mark and can kick a goal, and that's basically the limitations of his game, that would be a perfect plug and play player for us. And if we could get someone in the mid-season that could do anything like that, it'd be fantastic. I know it is hard because, a lot of these guys weren't picked up and they're still maybe 18 to 20 years old. And, what likelihood is there of a player that age coming into AFL and making an impact as a big man? I think it's quite low, as we saw with Sir Jacob Edwards. So, I still do think we should go with a key forward, but I do definitely hesitate about how much impact they could make this season, because I think we need a bit of impact this season, to be honest. Is there anyone out there that you think maybe for our forward line at all that could maybe make an instant impact?
There's the guy who was touted pretty early as being the number one pick in this, which is Jack Hutchinson. Sorry, he's playing for Collingwood VFL, mid-sized forward. He's 190 centimeters, 22-year-old. Yeah, he's been talked about for probably the past 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Have been pretty high. He took a Mark of the Year candidate in the VFL, and ended up. I think he kicked a couple of goals that game, and he's just got this really. He's one that can almost like a. What's that? Melbourne Collingwood backman now, House, I think it is. He can jump over everything, take big marks. I think he's got that. He's lively on the ground level. I don't think he impacts games for long times, and he's query at the next level. But I think he'll hit packs and he'll take a Mark of the Year at one stage, I reckon. So Jeremy Howe style, I would consider him.
Okay, it sounds very, very Zane Dersma to me.
That's the issue with him, and that's probably why we're not going to take him. We've got a few players in that position. Like we've got a few players in that position at the moment. Like he'd be sort of stepping on the toes of like a Curtis,
Braden George, even making his debut.
Yeah, Braden George. That's the other ones. Cooper Harvey, probably the other one.
Jaden
Stevenson. Yeah, all the above. Hence why I don't think we're taking him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. I think we got to steer away from half backs and half forwards, mate. I think that's been done to death. Midfielders then, let's have a look. Who do you see? Is there anyone, maybe that archetype that could go high in the draft, that could fill that bigger body midfielder in and under sort of player?
The bigger body one's always a really tough one. There's Matthew Ling, which was the Sydney player. They're looking at him as a senior body. He's 25. He's been playing a little bit. He could come in probably early and make a bit of an impact. I'm not overly huge on him. I think if we go a key position forward, with our first pick, like a Scaife, there's a chance with our second pick we could take someone like that just to get some immediate extra body in there. The one that we're also heavily connected to, potentially with number one, is this guy, Geordie Payne. He's 184 centimeters. He's playing for Tassie in the Coates League at the moment. He was what was he? He was last year really finished well, and this year he's come on and looked even better. He's played in the back line last year. He's moved up as a inside mid/forward this year. Only 18, as I said, like he just missed out last year. He was a bit unlucky. He's really hard over the ball. He's one of those players that plays with an edge. On the weekend just past, he had 29 disposals, 4 goals, 6 tackles, 7 marks, like 9 inside 50s. He had incredible numbers, and he's improved from his last year, which is something I like to look. And that was playing as well against Eastern, which is one of the strongest sides, and he was matched up often on a guy that's potentially number one, at Josh Smiley. So he had played a lot of time, in the midfield against him and in that space. Very hard tackler. Knocks on him for me is he's not very pacey. He's a bit slower. He's not really a tackle breaker, but that's, but he gets his hands clear and gets the ball moving on. I reckon it would be a workman style player at AFL level, but I think he's someone that could come in early and actually start playing for us early. He's one that actually, for me, he's my preference for the number one.
Okay.
Just because I think his upside, I think, is there. And I'm a bit allergic in these drafts because of good old friend Jacob Edwards about taking tools at this stage.
Yes.
But an interesting one though.
Oh yeah,
it's probably
It's scary because we've been hurt before by this draft, but look, I think my gut just says go with a tall because it's the most desperate need. But you're right, like it's even I said this before, it's very hard to find a tall impact player that's going to be able to come in and make an impact. Straight out of the mid-season draft. So yeah, you definitely prefer like a midfielder over a forward. If we got a midfielder at number one, do you think any of those key position players could slide to a 14, or you think like a Jasper would maybe go before 14?
I think Jasper will go earlier after. but that's yet again, like there's been a few years ago, it was Jackson Callow was the high ranked key forward, and he ended up slipping down to the second round for, I think it was Hawthorn. They picked him up, and I think it was second after, was it the Edwards one? I think it was. But he ended up, being delisted after 6 months, and then I think he found a list spot in another club and got delisted again shortly after. He's not one that's like, and that was like, I just find it hard with those prospects. So I think the best one that's come out of key positions, obviously Kalen, I think, is arguably the best backman. Blank, I think, from Hawthorn came out of this.
Yeah.
And then who else? Ash Johnson. He's but not a key forward, but he's a mid-sized forward for Collingwood. So those are the ones that have made impacts to an extent. But yeah, I just don't see the keep, like they're generally a couple of injuries in, and they're starting to show a little bit at higher level. So it's taking a punt. It's a big punt on these ones.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fair. So has there been anyone else we're linked to at all? Any key defenders or anything like that? I know a lot of people outside of North Melbourne definitely think we need a key defender, even though our stocks are quite high in that. Anyone else we're linked to?
The links are a bit weaker on these ones, but they've talked a lot, which is this guy, Jacob Blight, playing in the Waffle. Nice big. I think he's 196, 197 centimetre key defender, playing really well at that level. Jacob Blight, yep. So I think he's unlikely to add to our stocks. As like I rate a lot of the other players for us pretty highly. I love Dawson, as I said, and Kalen. I think I'm looking forward to when he comes back, because I think he'll add a lot. He's very good one-on-one, this guy. He'll end up going, if he doesn't go to us, which I don't think he will, he'll end up probably going to Richmond or West Coast. He's been getting linked to them as well. Particularly being from Perth, they always link them over there. So he's one worth mentioning. He'll get called out early, I think. And the last one, which a lot of the fans, particularly on a few of the sites, have been talking about, is Zekeli, which is a great name.
Great name.
His highlights are something to watch, to be honest. They're actually well worth it. Small forward, runs really hard, hits packs hard. Just got a bit of attitude about him. I think the way he plays, it's like he's a bit small, he knows it, but he plays harder because of it. Bit of a chip on his shoulder, which is nice to see at that size. But here's another name that you might hear called out. It'd be nice for him to go to a club, to be honest, and it's good to bring him up, but it'll be interesting to see how he goes. I don't know if he gets a club, but it's one worth watching, the Zekeli, as I'll call him, the Zekels.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we are crying out for a bit of a small forward with a bit of a chip on his shoulder, but I think the other ones are slightly more priority. Here's the hard question for you, though, okay? We know what you're like tipping drafts. Tip what we're going to do with pick 1 and pick 14. What do you think we're going to do? We're going to hold you to this because you've had an impeccable record so far.
I don't think we'll go past Payne. I reckon Payne's going to be our first. And I'm very close to calling a pass on the second, to be honest. I think there's a genuine risk of a pass on the second. But let's chuck out a Noah Howes, because I think there's a chance that he'll be there at that stage. If we don't pick him up, I'm not sure if he'll get taken by anyone else in the second, if they're still there when we're there.
Yeah. Okay. See, for some reason, my gut, and once again, you're so much more knowledgeable on this than me, but I did try and do as much research as I can. The Jasper one for me is just, there's something about it that I think we should go that direction, and then maybe try and go a slightly older midfielder. What was the slightly older midfielder's name again? I've forgotten already.
Ling. He's been on a couple of lists.
Yeah.
I think he's 25, but he's been on a couple of lists already, and he's playing good. That is a very, like, those two, it's really tough to know between Geordie Payne and Jasper Scaife, because they're two that we're getting linked to, and depending on which reporter is reporting it, both of them say that they're our number one. So it'll be that'll actually be the question. It might firm up closer, because I think Geordie Payne's playing in the playing for the Allies this weekend. So it'll be an interesting watch. If he has a particularly big event there, that might sort of sway them slightly that way. So it'll be a good one to watch, though.
If there was any way for us to come out with a Jasper Scaife and a Geordie Payne, I would be very, very excited. But hey, once again, as we know, the mid-season draft isn't actually that exciting, and we're acting like we're getting top tier talent here. But hey, look, that's the state we're at. So look, I think it'll be very, very interesting. I would love to see a key position forward in here because it's our biggest hole, but. Someone like a Geordie Payne looks pretty exciting from the highlights I've seen. And I won't say no to another Tassie boy in the club. We know that they're built tough down there. And like myself, of course, as you can tell by my slightly raspier than normal voice. So look.
All wrapped up in our Melbourne conditions.
Yeah. Look, it's bloody hard up here, but someone's got to do it, don't they? So look, I'm excited. What is it? The 29th, isn't it? At night? Wednesday the 29th, I think the draft is.
It's the Wednesday. Yep, Wednesday. It was Wednesday the 29th. Yeah, I do believe that's the date. And then,
is it televised or is it just like they post a photo of whoever's drafted? No, it wouldn't be, would it?
You can watch it through the AFL app. I watched it last year for a surprise pickup at the time, which was Hansen Jr. He was surprised, but man, I thought he was gone for all money at the end of the year, but he looked actually fairly good in a couple of the BPMs. They've moved him up the ground slightly. He's fun to watch. He got emergency listed this game. I don't think he's a dead cause, which is nice to see.
No, that's true. Well, look, fantastic. Another half forward, just what we need. So that's it's nice to know none of our players can play close to goal at all, which is bloody terrifying, mate. But look, let's hope for some exciting players in the mid-season. Let's get around them and, try and be a bit excited for it. I know it's the mid-season. It's not all that, but we need anything humanly possible to be excited for right now. So I'm definitely excited and hope we can definitely draft some players that can come in and make somewhat of an immediate impact.
Yeah, I believe, like I said, Geordie Payne, I feel, can do that. I don't think any key position forward is, but Geordie Payne, I actually believe, can have an impact. I like him a lot. He's a player that I like. I think he's got something to him. He's hard-nosed, which we haven't got a lot of in the middle at the moment, other than Georgie.
Oh, man. Look, let's not start talking about George Wardlaw. Yeah, Tommy Powell. I don't think Tommy Powell's going to be the one that's under a pack, though.
No, great.
He doesn't mind a bit of a fight, but George Wardlaw starts them. So we do need a little bit more grunt in that midfield. And Geordie Payne does sound like a good prospect. I don't know. I hesitate and we're not going to get into the obviously the national draft now, but there isn't too many key position talents probably at number 1 or 2 if we are lucky this year. And I can't see North Melbourne not drafting the best available talent, which I think we need to stop doing. But there's plenty to suggest that we should still take the talents. But hey, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But other than that, is there anything else maybe to wrap up with the draft or anything else you want to comment on? Give us something here.
I think we did lose a bit of hardness in the off-season when we did lose Kane Turner, though.
All right. I think I need to cut the podcast off here after Kane Turner chat. Look, we've brought up Phoenix Spicer, Flynn Perez, Jacob Edwards, and Kane Turner, mate. This has been an absolute nightmare of a time.
Harsh but fair.
Harsh but fair, like Glenn Archer.
Oh, fair call.
Well, let's wrap it up there, mate. Thank you for coming on once again, and your insight is always fantastic. You definitely, every time you're on, you teach me a lot about what our club is looking at, and you're a trustworthy source, as we know from last year's draft. So, look, maybe we can do a quick episode after we get our picks, and we can talk about who we got, and then I'm sure we'll hear from you again when it's time to pick in the top 2 of the draft once again at the end of this year.
Definitely would be worth a talk then.
Sounds good, mate. We'll talk very soon.
Thanks for having me again, Josh. Appreciate it.